What's up guys, MindWarrior here, or Christian, and today we have the first power ranking of Season 3 of the MPL. Now, this was a very hard list to compile for me because I'm basing this whole list on Week 1 of the season. And a lot can change, and I believe a lot of these teams you will see move up along the course of this season. So with that being said, here is my opinion on the 12 teams in this league and where they rank out of each other. So, getting right into it, number 12. We have the Chicago Chandelures, coached by Asteroid. And I don't like putting him here. This was his first league game, and there was a lot of pressure on him, I believe. And he was, as he said in his video, he was a little nervous going into it. But I believe he prepped well. He had a lot of creative sets and a lot of bold choices. And I think that's important to bring variety to the format. And I believe he did that. And he had some nice switch-ins and plays. For example, some of the plays that he made was the Talonflame switch on the Excadrill. Even knowing that it could carry the Rock Slide, he still did anyway, knowing that Patrick would go for the Earthquake instead of the Rock Slide, going for the safe play. And I believe that was a great play. And also going for the Roost to not take as much damage from the Rotom Heat in case it was going to go for a Volt Switch. And I thought that was great. And he has great promise so far. And the creative sets like the Steel Wing Empoleon, I loved. Bluffing the Scarf Garchomp, that was great. Just some of the predictions, of course, you're never going to get all your predictions right. But the predictions that he got wrong were very crucial. For example, the Sableye switch into the Blastoise. That was a huge play because his Mega was already taken down to very low HP from the very start of the battle, which I thought was kind of risky. And having your Mega crippled, and especially a Mega Sableye crippled, is a huge hindrance on his team. Pretty much being already down to a 6-5, because this thing was not going to be able to switch into anything. And also the Garchomp. And I think that was an unfortunate play, having the timer run out on him. And just not only revealing the Draco, but the Rotom Heat, killing it with an HP Ice. That was a huge play in the game, and I think he never really mentally kind of recovered from that slip-up. He always focused on that and could never really pull the momentum back. And he realized that was a huge play. But also, watching Patrick's side of this battle, he said that a Stone Edge wouldn't kill. It did around 75%, and I think he had, like, at max, a max roll, and I believe he had around 75 HP at that point. So a Stone Edge wouldn't have killed even if he went for it. So I think it was risky on Asteroid's part for leaving that Garchomp and even saying that this Rotom Heat might have HP Ice. And he realized the threat that was there and still kind of risked it. Well, and then got in the middle of calcing and then just lost track of time. And I think that's a huge thing that I don't think he'll make that mistake again, because it's that mental awareness, that mental focus that you have to have, especially on Wi-Fi. I also think there was some I loved his prep, but also I didn't love his prep. In the way of he had two huge threats that actually did a lot if the right sets were used in Hydreigon and Mew. Those two could have been very helpful, and especially in the way of, well, Florges still kind of swept up at the end, but he had a huge Earthquake weakness, and especially a choice, although this wasn't the set, a choice-banded Mold Breaker Excadrill. I mean, it wrecks his entire team besides Talonflame, and Talonflame, I don't believe, can one-shot an Excadrill, and Rock Slide destroys it. So, I thought a Mew or Hydreigon, especially with a Hydreigon with Levitate, and a defensive Mew set possibly, could have done a lot of work and maybe had more switch-ins. Well, I don't know, I just believe that he could have used some of his higher draft picks and some of his stronger mons to really put more pressure than being so passive. I thought he used Electros beautifully with the mix set, and I love Electros anyways. That's a personal choice anyway. But I thought he could have used some of his other mons better, and I thought he could have maybe used Hydreigon and Mew and put that onto the team to really put more pressure on Patrick. And also the whole thing with the hazard control, and just that the lack of hazard removal, I believe, wasn't as in-depthful, because all he really had was Empoleon, and Empoleon kinda isn't the best of Fogger, I'll admit. So, I don't know, I think he will learn from this very much so, and I could very much see him moving up in the coming weeks. But I think he kind of has to sit down, and I think while I love some of the choices, I think he might have gotten a little too fancy with the plays and the prep. So I think if he just sits down and try to make the safe, easy reads to start out, instead of trying to go with the home run hit every time, I think he will definitely improve. So, moving on to number 11, we have Dylan, coach of the Miami Heat Moors. This is a very hard one as well, because I like his team, and when I interviewed him, I kind of said the same thing. And it was just kind of very unfortunate, because that focus miss, and I call it focus miss because that's what it is, that kind of screwed him for the entire rest of the game, because that Bisharp pretty much one-shot everything, barring the Mega Swampert, and it had a Focus Sash. So I thought that was kind of a scary play. And knowing that Focus Blast only has a 75% chance of hitting, I believe, I wouldn't have taken that risk. Although I know it can one-shot, I personally wouldn't have done that. I probably would have maybe predicted the Focus Sash and gone for the Volt Switch, because Thundurus was such a huge part of his team, and gone to something else. But again, hindsight is 20/20. But I also think that why I have him at number 11 is the composure issue. And I think that, of course, that would ruin anyone's composure when you have a +2 Bisharp standing right in front of you, and it just one-shot your Cobra Berry Rhyhorns with knockoff. I would be totally out of it. And he was down pretty much. Like, Swampert was almost taken down, and the Rhyhorns and the Scizor were totally one-shot. And I think it was that lack of composure, especially at that point, that he didn't, kind of sit down, relax, and try to refocus to bring the game back. I believe he did try to bring the game back as much as he could, which I did like. And his prep was pretty solid. But he was just stuck between that rock and a hard place once that Focus Blast missed and the Swords Dance went up on the Bisharp. So I could, again, definitely see Dylan moving up. He just can't lose that composure during the match. I think that's the main thing with him. He just has to kind of sit down, release the tension, and say, what can I do now to win this game? And I think maybe not go for like I said for Asteroid, not go for the home run hit when you know you have a move that doesn't hit all the time. Maybe if you did predict the Sash, go for a Volt Switch, save this thing, and go into something that might be able to tank a hit, like the Mega Swampert, which we did see tank the hit. And also the Bisharp, that being a common set, the Swords Dance set with Sucker Punch, it was kind of meh not predicting that. But nonetheless, I believe Dylan has a high chance of moving up and really putting in work. I believe that this was just a game where he had no control of what to do. So, going off of that same thing, we have number 10, the St. Louis Sableye, coached by Dan. Putting the champion from last season here really is hard for me. But I think he just didn't play at the standard we're used to seeing him play. And I also think that Blake totally not only out-prepped him, but the team matchup was totally out of Dan's favor. And also, Dan has had a losing streak in some other leagues, like the TBU. He's kind of been on a loss of mojo slide that I think he can definitely recover from. But in the battle, I think he made the plays that had to be made. He made the safest plays for his team it just, Blake totally outplayed him and out-prepped him. And the team matchup was totally imbalanced. But also looking at his team, I think he had too many bug weaknesses in the Greninja and also the Gothitelle. When you know his team's and in the Mega Latias, knowing that he's probably going to bring U-turners, and when he has a lot of utility with the U-turn, especially when you have a trapping mon like Gothitelle, I think that was kind of unfortunate because there was no real way around that bug weakness. Excuse me. But he really has to watch out for that in the coming weeks, because having a team that's a lot weak to U-turn is very scary. And after seeing what that Infernape did to that Latias on U-turn, how much damage, that was astounding. And I think Dan Ree has to watch out for that. And also, like I said, I think while he made the reads he had to make, it was still too safe, and there was no play that really stuck out in my mind like, wow, he's really trying to get back this momentum and really try to put Blake off. I think it was all safe plays that he made. And also, he had no Manaphy checks, and I think that's also a thing with his team. But once Manaphy set up that Calm Mind, it was all over by that point. And that's really all I have to say about Dan. I think because he was the champion, I want to see him gain back this mojo. I'm not sure yet what will happen. I feel like he definitely has the capability to do so. And he has a very powerful team. He just has to kind of settle in and be aware of how to use this team, because it's very different from last season. So I think if he really understands how to use his team and really be comfortable with it, which is a big thing, and work around some of those weaknesses, I think he can definitely move up. So now moving into number 9, this one was unfortunate. I felt bad. It's Blizz, coach of the Blackthorn Frogadiers. Now he just got haxed insanely between the paras and the crits. It was just awful. I felt bad watching that match from his perspective. And I thought his team was very good. Just some of the prep, that's also why he's at number 9. And I want to see what he does in the future, because when he's not in a haxed game, so that I'm going to be watching out for. But on the same token, the prep I wasn't impressed with. I think that Scarf T-Tar totally wrecked his team. And Slowking, he had no Slowking checks. Life Orb Slowking, literally two shots, everything on his team. And also he had no Togekiss, checks, because that Air Slash and with the Thunder Wave Air Slash combination totally destroyed. And I think it was great on, and I thought it was great on Aura's part to really speed control when you have a Mega Charizard X staring you down in the face, to really speed control and carry that para and the T-Wave. So there's really not much I can say about Blizz. I kind of want to see what he does with his prep later, and how he does when he's not in a haxed situation. So now, moving on to the number 8 spot, I have the Anastar Umbreons, coached by Mystic. And I thought this was a very, very close and great game between him and Baiser. And I thought the Zoroark bluff was the best play of the game. I loved it. And I didn't even see it coming. I was like, oh, he just has the Mega Lob. This is interesting. And then reveals the Flamethrower. And at first, I thought it was just a special Mega Lopunny at first, because you never know. That thing gets all those moves. And I was like, wow, it's the Zoroark. And if Baiser didn't predict that, that would have been a huge turning point in this match. And I think that was a huge point in the match where this game could have been won or lost. But on the same token with Zoroark, I think he let it go too soon, because that Azelf definitely was going to one-shot it with U-turn, especially after the rocks. So I kind of thought that was an unfortunate play because he could have definitely used Zoroark more to his advantage, and he just let it go to Scarf as of early. And also, again, with the set as well, Keldeo going for that Keldeo set I wasn't the biggest fan of, and I love Sub Calm Mind. I love it. But the problem with that set on this team is that having cornering yourself to 2 moves wasn't the smartest thing. Because when you have a team like Bicers, where you have a Ferrothorn staring you down in the face, Secret Sword is definitely needed on this team, or on this Keldeo set. But that means you have to sacrifice Calm Mind or Sub. And I think a Sub 3 attack set would have worked better than the Calm Mind set, in my opinion. But again, hindsight's 20/20 in that respect. Like I said, the Ferrothorn was a huge thorn in his side. I hate myself. But I also think him getting up the late game rocks was kind of questionable at that point, because he really, like, the Victini was hurt by the rocks, and that was really it. I think it would have been better to get off an attack at that point than just going for the late game rocks. I don't know. And Nidoking kind of just swept at the end, and that was good on Bicester to break down his team enough so that Nidoking can come in and just clean up his team. But I thought Mystic tried to pull it back, and I think he did his best to pull it back with Lopunny at the end. He just really couldn't. And I don't know. This was a very hard match, and I believe it was a very close and great match too. And that's why he's kind of higher than some of these other teams, because I think he did what he had to do. Just some of the prep was kind of questionable, in my opinion, but he still kept a very close game, and he kind of just was innovative enough to keep the game in his favor, to keep that momentum going for him. So, with that, going into number 7, we have the Viridian Beedrills coached by Dench. Now, oh my god, this game between him and Jordy was, I believe, the game of the week. This was fantastic. Some of the sets between the two of them, which I will get to Jordy's later, but first let's focus on Dench. Natural Gift Breloom destroyed my life. That was the greatest thing I've seen, ever. Not only that, but the Scarf Latios really put in work against this team. And not only that, the Fire Blast Mega Gyarados was great for the Amoonguss, because if that missed, it would have been huge for Dench. That Fire Blast really put momentum in his favor, and that I loved. And this was really a momentum shift battle. And one of the other things I praised Dench for is when you've seen that Landorus that Thunderous Eye in your face with 2 nasty plots set up. He didn't worry. And carrying the Mirror Coat just in case was great too. Just didn't work out because the double nasty plot. And he saw 2 of his mons go down very quickly in Meloetta and Suicune, and said, whatever, and turned back that momentum when he threw in that Scarf Latios, and really tried to pull back the game. And I definitely thought he could have. I just thought Jordy played a better game than Dench. So, I think I believe he could have definitely won this match. It was just Jordy had the slight upper hand against him. I thought the prep was great. The plays were great. I praise him. I could definitely see him going into the top 5 very soon. This was just a matchup where you're facing one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best players and one of the best teams in the league. So, I praise Dench for keeping it a very close game and almost winning it at the end. If it wasn't for the Scarf Latias, and I could have seen Dench fairly winning this match. So now we go into the teams with wins. Now we go into that section of this we go into the top 6. Excuse me. Now we have at number 6 the Detroit Leopards, coached by Cypher. Now, this was a very interesting spot for him, in my opinion, because I'm just not sold on Cypher yet. I think his team offensively is one of the scariest teams in the entire league. And also the use of Bisharp was fantastic. I just thought that the sets were kind of standard. I wasn't impressed. I think it was the safe prep. And he just had so much offensive pressure on Dylan that he was going to win this match, I believe. I just can't place him higher than some of these other teams at this point. I believe he, like I've said with every other team, they have the potential to move up indefinitely. And I believe with the offensive pressure that Cypher brings, he can definitely do so. I'm just not sure where to rank him yet. And I think 6 being right in the middle is perfect, because who he was up against. And I think, not to discourage Dylan at all or to call him, or to demean him, I think he's a great battler. I just thought he played off of a focus miss and totally just ran away with the game. So I would love to see how he does against other players and some of the higher ranking players on this list and in the league, and to see how he performs. That's really when I will either move him up or I'll move him down. But I think 6 is the perfect middle spot for him. Next up, at number 5, we have the Houston Megahorns, coached by Aura. Now, the reason, again, I don't have him up higher is because this was a very hacksy game. And while I believe Cypher and Aura could have been switched between each other at these spots, I believe that Aura's play was a little bit better. And in regard to what I mean is that the Slowking, he realized that offensive Slowking puts in so much work and destroys his team. And he really used, I think he tried to use T-Wave, although not for the hacksy reasons, but for the speed control. Because when you're staring at a Mega Charizard, like I said, you don't want to let this thing set up. So paralyzing it is a huge thing. But I think the hacks were so much in his favor that it really put the game out of proportion. And although a 4-0 is still great, I think it could have been a much closer game without the hacks. I believe Aura would have still won. It just wouldn't have been such a high score. But I loved the set. I loved the Scarf T-Tar because I think that really disrupted his team, and having it to tailor to outspeed a Miss Magius was perfect. The Solar Beam Power Herb Heatran was amazing. Knowing that he was going to go for the Rapid Spin was an amazing prediction, and I love that so much. And I believe that the creativeness was not too creative and out there, like, say, Asteroids with some of the moves. But I believe it was safe enough also to really put the game and the win in his favor when he would have been down, or to really keep momentum and to keep his opponent on the tip of his toes. So, with that being said, I think I also want to see, like Cypher, Aura have a game without hacks. Or a game where the game is pretty much handed to him in his favor automatically. So, I could see, again, him moving up or down depending on that. Next up with number 4, I have the San Francisco 49 Tails, coached by Bicer. And like I said when I was talking about Mystic, this was a great game, and I think Bicer did an amazing job, first off, keeping his win conditioning. He knew that Scarf Azup was going to win him this game, and he really kept control of it. He switched it in on the Keldeo to make sure that it didn't sweep his team. He switched it in on the Megalopony and switched out because this was his only counter to outspeed the Megalopony and to definitely OHKO it. And he did an amazing job, not only that, but to whittle down the huge threats. I believe that Mystic has 2 of the biggest threats in the league format in Lando I and Megalopony. And Bicer totally took control of that. And he really, especially Toxicking the Lando I in the beginning of the game and really whittling it down to pretty much when it came in with rocks to be at 0.5%. Or to be at 50% health because of the Zapdos, and to know, and also with the Zapdos, the Hazard control with defog. I think that was great to really predict and to really keep the rocks off his side, knowing that was a huge thing. What else? I believe that the prep was on point. The walls that he had for Mystic's team was fantastic. The Pharaoh Zapdos core was great, and it really put in work. And I believe he had enough defensive presence to whittle down the team to where one of his bigger threats could just come in and take control, like the Nidoking did. I believe the Nidoking really put pressure on and totally wrecked. And I believe the presence, although Victini didn't really do much, the presence of Victini totally put Mystic on hold and to really make him think about plays, because Victini is a huge threat, no matter what. And of course the Azelf being there. And also I like the composure of Bison as well, when seeing that Keldeo setting up a sub and then Calm Minding. He didn't get scared with the Pharaoh, and Seeing just kept gyro balling it, and to not over predict, to switch out to another Mon, and then totally get swept by this thing. I think that was huge, and I love to see a coach have so much composure to sit in the face of a setup Mon that's as powerful as Keldeo, and still be able to whittle it down with the gyro balls, to finally come in with Azelf, outspeed it, and then just wreck it with Zen Headbutt. So that was great on Bicer's part. Next up, we have Leeds Rhyhorns, coached by Jordy. Whew. Like I said with Dench, this was the best game of the week. And he played his team so well. Although he had to sacrifice the Mamo and didn't go for the Ice Shore, which was, I think, the one misplay I could point out in that game on his side. The reason I have him up, comparatively to some of these other teams that got bigger win differentials, is because of how he played the team. He sacrificed the Mamo to the Scarflatios to really test what set this was, and to really bring it down, because once it was at, I believe, -4, he could just bring in the Thunderous, nasty plot up, and predicting the Suicune to go for the Mirror Coat and to nasty plot again was amazing. And I like how he didn't put his eggs all in one basket. And what I mean by that is, once the Thunderous went down to the Scarflatios and he realized that it was a Scarflatios, he didn't totally freak out, and because he had all his faith in Thunderous coming in and sweeping Dench's team. I think that was perfect of him to really control the situation, to kind of sit back and say, what can I do now, and really approach the game one step at a time. I thought that was great. And hiding the Scarf on Latias until the very, very end of the game was great. And although Ditto was kind of, in this case, a waste of a spot, in my opinion, on this team against Dench's team, it was a nice wild card to have in the back, just in case Dench wanted to set up. And I think that was what really Ditto was used for, just in case a setup Mon was to come out. And I just think he used his team amazingly. Spadef Hitmontop saved the entire game. The use of Hitmontop and Amoonguss really helped out. The Ditto coming in on the Cofagrigus, that's what I was thinking of. On the Cofagrigus, to really take it out and to take out a huge wall and to really put pressure on Dench's team and to realize what set this Cofagrigus was a huge play. But all in all, I think Jordy played an amazing game, and I can definitely see him, and he really came back in huge fashion, coming back to where he was before he left last season, and really showing that he is one of the major threats in this league. At number 2, we have the Sin City Star Raptors, coached by Patrick. Now, like I said when talking about Asteroid, I think this was a huge team matchup difference. I think Patrick's team totally outmatched him because of the Mold Breaker ground weakness, besides barring the, whatever it's called, the Talonflame. I think he made safe plays, but he also made very good plays in the way of staying in on the Garchomp, staying in with the Hippowdon, and earthquaking the Empoleon. There were just a couple other plays that I can't think of, but just really stuck out in my head. that he really controlled the match, and there was never a point, in my opinion, that he lost momentum of this game. He always knew that he had control of this game comparatively, and especially once the Garchomp went down, the momentum totally shifted in his favor. And that's what's kept me from putting him at number 1, is because once that Garchomp went down, it was kind of an easy sweep for his team. And that Florida sweep makes me so happy that he got like 3 kills with it. That was just perfect. But I think he also used his walls very well. He made safe plays and good choices, and that's very important. It's not about making the flashiest play, it's about making the safe plays that turn out to have the biggest benefit in the end. And I think that's what Patrick did. And he didn't get rattled by the plays that Astro made and some of the move sets that he had. He always went with the safest bet. And although sometimes it seemed repetitive and someone else could maybe take control of that, the safe plays, and really use it to their advantage, I think this was just a great game played by Patrick. I think he kept his win conditions well. He did everything that he had to do to win this game. And finally, at the number 1 spot, we have Blake, coach of the Baltimore Braviaries. And what a way to start the season for Blake, coming off of that loss in the finals. Coming against a player like Dan, who's one of the top in this league, I believe, and of course the champion that he lost to, coming in and totally putting in so much pressure on his team. And the use of Whimsicott in this game was fabulous. And also the use of U-turn and the use of getting priority and keeping that momentum going for his side was great. And I think the prep totally out-prepped Dan, and I think his plays totally outplayed him as well. Manaphy was just godly and put in so much work against his team, and he waited for the right opportune time to unveil the Hydration Rain Dance Calm Mind set, and Scald really wrecked his team. And I think the Walk-On Berry was great to have on Manaphy. Risky, but I think it was great, and it worked out, especially with Emboar. And I don't think Dan was really predicting the Walk-On Berry. The Shed Shell Skarmory was great because he knew that was the one thing that could easily be trapped by Goth and that wasn't going to be able to get U-turn, and totally used it to his advantage. And that was awesome to really throw Dan off as well. I think the hazard control on his side was kind of risky, but it really worked out in the way of he knew that if he defogged, he wouldn't have rocks on Dan's side, which would have killed the Latias on where it was at. And I think while it was risky for Blake to keep the rocks up, it really wasn't hurting him too much. So it really played out, and having the Mega Latias come down to Stealth Rocks when it came in after the U-turn hit, and it was great. And I think Blake totally didn't get shaken up after that last loss last season, and totally just kept the game in his favor. And I think this was a huge team matchup. And of course the annoyingness with Rock and Whirlwind Skarm and the walls in Whimsicott and just how he played his team was totally fantastic. And I think he put just so much offensive pressure as well. Mega Glalie getting a kill, and Infernape just coming in and U-turning, and same thing with Whimsicott, and taking control of a situation, especially when you have a Shadow Tag Mon in Gothitelle. You have one of the fastest and best offensive Mons in Greninja. You have one of the scariest, I think the best Mega in the format in Mega Latias, and he didn't get rattled, and he just kind of came into the match and totally asserted dominance. And that's what I think he did. And that's why I believe Blake is right now in the number 1 spot. He had a very convincing win. The team advantage was there, and he totally asserted dominance over Dan. So, there's the list. I would love to hear feedback on what you think of this list and your own list and your own ranking at this point. Leave it down in the comment section below. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like. Keep following the season because it's going to be a very good one, and I can see a lot of these teams putting so much work this season. And with that being said, I thank you, and peace out.